It's NFL Week 14, and everything has been a snafu preparing for the show today. So my line service won't log me in. This stupid microphone is in my face, and I can't fix it. But the good news is Ron is here, and he has a surprise topic, which I don't even know what he's going to be talking about. And then at the end of the show, I want to talk about my last week betting strategy discussion, updates, and that sort of thing. So I don't want to put that at the front of the show. Ron, how you doing? And what are we going to talk about?
Well, last week was weird. I'm sure we'll decipher the games a little bit, but had the right side, had the wrong results. A little frustrating college and NFL. I don't know. It's glass half empty, half full, because a lot of frustrating, weird results. Guys in college, 9 out of 9 from inside the 40-yard line, missing a field goal. One team, Boise, leaving 28 points on the table with 2 touchdowns called back and so on. And then the stuff in the NFL. But the bright side, as you know, is that the season in the NCAA came to a halt, and the season win ledger was pretty good. 35 wins, 8 losses, 3 ties. So we'll take that every time. Another challenge this week. I know a lot of people are pretty happy with last week's results in the NFL. So ready to get at it one more week.
Yeah, college was very disappointing. I started off very well, and I think I lost about 6 out of the last 7 games, and it was extremely frustrating.
Yeah, I was 5-1 to start and 7-7 or 8-8 to finish. Saturday didn't go right.
Yeah, and you touch on something I'm going to talk about a little bit also after, toward the end of the show, regarding how we're getting to these results. So go ahead. What's the surprise topic? Before we get into looking back at week 13, you wanted to bring something up.
Yeah, so I think the order of business may be look back at week 13, then come up with the surprise topic. Okay. I want to talk about week 18. And this is probably the only show that I'm going to do this on with you. And I want to get your feedback, and anybody listening and anybody who's watching or listening to this show after the fact, because I know it's in the middle of the day on Tuesday. If you leave comments on YouTube, I will answer those comments on YouTube. But week 18 brings a lot of crazy, interesting, innovative ideas as far as how to attack the board. And I want to discuss that in just a little bit later into the show, because it's not too early to talk about it, believe it or not, Cris, because we almost know who the playoff teams are in the AFC. We pretty much know. And in the NFC, we know who the wild card teams are. We just have a couple of divisions up for grabs. We have very early playoff entries, and I want to talk about how each team is going to handle week 18.
Well, that sounds good to me. Well, go. Oh, if we're looking back, this Chicago Bears Lions game, I got to tell you. What did you do on Thursday? Did you have anything on Thursday?
Yeah, I had 2 plays on Thursday. I mean, the line went down too much compared to my power ratings, and I took the Lions, and it was frustrating because the Lions did everything but score all the points they needed in the first half. And then you could sort of see it get out of hand in the second half, where they were lucky to hold on and win. Just the rhythm of the game changed. But the Lions literally could have been up 27-30 to nothing in the first half while Chicago was floundering. I had a bigger play on Green Bay, but it was a 1-in-1 day, essentially, on Thursday.
I almost lost the most amount of money I have ever lost on a game, on the Lions game. I'll discuss that at the end of the show. I had a big interest in the Lions game, and then the Raiders. I did have the Raiders. That was a scary bet to make, but made the bet.
Yeah, no, that was good. Didn't play that. Didn't even pay attention to the Giants and Dallas game.
Yeah, I've got nothing. I glean nothing from Obviously the Lions are in injury purgatory at this point. I wouldn't put it in the critical category. I mean, it's absolutely amazing how many players they have down and still able to, weather the storm to date. This week's going to be a real test, obviously.
Still pressure on them from two angles. Minnesota keeps winning the one-score games, so they're putting pressure. And Philadelphia has raised their level of play, as we now know, and they're putting pressure as far as the number one seed. So not that Dan Campbell needs any motivation, but there's motivation to stay. When you're at the top of anything, everybody comes to get you.
Yeah, I mentioned it last week that it would only take a bad week or two for the Lions to be in that 5th seed spot. So everybody, a lot of people anointing them as the best team in the NFL. They got a long way to go, just even before the playoffs start. So I think they know that.
Putting a capper on Friday. So Kansas City keeps dropping slightly in terms of teams passing them. It's not that their power rating has changed for me. I think you had them lower than I did. I had them 6th last week, and I think they've dropped to 7th or 8th.
Yeah, they're not very high on my list. But remember, last year they weren't very high on the list either, and they were able to make their run. So,
and I'm going to talk about that.
I got nothing on the Giants, Cowboys. Teams in these situations, it really makes navigating these last few weeks rough. Miami Dolphins defense, what the hell was that? I thought Miami would perform better. I thought that they had their act together a little bit better than they did. And everybody that had Green Bay made it sound like it was the easiest bet in the world. I mean, I didn't bet the game, but I thought it was a good case to make on both ends. But I will say one thing, and it's hilarious, because during the game, I was having texting with somebody, and the Miami coach shivering on the sideline, how that is going to, and it was during the game, I go, how the hell is that weenie nerd going to inspire any great play out of his players when he looks like he's going to freeze to death, and you want to just like wrap him up in a blanket and tuck him in? I mean, it was just ridiculous. And then sure enough, it did become a point. The players were saying that, they lost respect for him watching him do that.
Well, if it were me on the sideline, I'd be looking the same way. With he doesn't weigh that much. I don't weigh that much. Just give me 13 coats and let me coach there. But I'm not the coach. I had a couple good. I mean, I wish it was as easy as the number one play of the day. It was not even close to my number one play. But I had situations favoring Green Bay in this game, so I was pretty happy at the odds. To get 3. I think it went to 3.5 at the end. I don't remember because my bet was in there, but I was pretty comfortable with that. So going into Saturday and Sunday, I was looking pretty good, but I know we're going to touch on Saturday or we're going to touch on Sunday. So my day started moving in a different direction.
The Washington Titans game went as I expected, a little bit easier than I expected for Washington to get out that big lead, but they were supposed to do that. No real surprises on my end. Were you surprised?
I wasn't on the game. It was a reset game for Washington. I think we talked about who they played the last few weeks and who was coming up now, and their schedule really softens up. They still needed to prove it to me. Somehow their defense is improving. I don't know. Do you show Washington defensive improvement over your last 4 or 5 weeks? Good question for you.
They're dead middle.
Okay, but it must have been worse to start the season.
For the season, yeah, it's improved because they were bottom 10. Now they're almost ready to look into the top 10. I think I have them about 12 or something, or 13.
Okay.
But
So not bad considering that their opponents got a little tougher, yet their ranking got a little better.
where Washington is getting dinged is they're number 32 offensively over the last 5 weeks. So that's where they're dropping off.
Even though they put up 42. Yeah, not much to say about this game because Tennessee is in rebuild mode and Washington, again, the culture bring them through. They're back in the race. They're not out of the NFC East race, and they're certainly hoping to make the playoffs. And I think the schedule sets them up to make the playoffs.
Chargers result was exactly as I anticipated, but the way the game got there was a little surprising. Cousins was a complete and utter disaster. The Chargers were basically outplayed in most facets of the game and somehow came away with the win.
Yeah, I suffered the loss and I had the right side. I mean, I had Atlanta plus 2 points because I bet it at this time last week. I already had the bet in play. So if Cousins doesn't throw maybe the worst pass I've ever seen him throw in his career at the end of the game, and they kick a field goal, fourth and long from the 10 or whatever, a short field goal, they lose. Even if they lose 17-16, you're happy and I'm happy. It's unbelievable to me that he threw 4 interceptions, that Atlanta actually had 5 defensive sacks in that game. Believe it or not, Chris, they're still last in the league in sacks, even though they have 5 in that particular game. But Atlanta did everything but cover and win this game. And it just frustrated me that I had to watch that game and watch the money burn.
Yeah, I was happy I got it. I ended up teasing both directions on the game, so it was falling right there in the middle was nice.
Yeah.
Steelers Bengals. The Bengals defense is embarrassing. I mean, how are you ever going to win a game like that? I think Pittsburgh had over 500 yards of offense. It's just so atypical of them. I was surprised Pittsburgh was able to win by margin. I was scared, very scared that Cincinnati would just blow them out and Pittsburgh wouldn't be able to keep up offensively, even though I did make comments. Well, they've been doing better offensively. I didn't think they could get into a shootout, and they sure could.
Yeah, so there's somebody, I wish I knew who said it, but it was somebody I respect, an analyst in the field, said, you just can't build a team that's half full. And I remember when Peyton Manning was on the Colts, that team was always half full because everything they did was get a better offense. They got Peyton Manning offensive weapons. They got him the offensive line. They got him the wide receivers. They got him the running back. And Peyton Manning with the Colts had to outscore every single team just to stay in the game. Joe Burrow's career could be similar to that if Cincinnati doesn't fix their defense, because Joe Burrow's done almost nothing wrong this year, and he has nothing to show for it.
Yeah, he's starting to become in a tough spot. We'll have to see how that develops. I was the Patriots worked out fine. I was surprised the Colts went for 2 to win the game, but I think that's what you want to do.
Yeah, my wife was in the room at the time, and I told her when the touchdown was scored, I even used the word guarantee, which I don't use. I said, guarantee they're going for 2. Absolutely guarantee. When you have that kind of quarterback in this kind of game, you want to win or lose it right then and there. And I also said, and I don't think this was a magic saying on my part, but I said Richardson would carry the ball. I mean, I know a lot of teams like to pass when they're down in the red zone. Just see the 8 overtime game in the NCAA and how many times they pass the ball. But in this case, Indianapolis went for 2, got it, and won the game. So it's kind of how I thought the game would play out.
What was Richardson's completion percentage?
I don't believe it was anything special as usual. I will look it up for you. if I can find it. Did they play this week? They don't play, so I got to find it in a different place. Okay, he was 12 of 24, which is not good by NFL standards. As Russell said, 12 of 24, but a lot of drops. But, he completes 2 more passes and gets to 14 out of 24. It's still below league average.
Oh, same old with Houston. Exact same scenario. Can't cover the spread, wins the game.
Nah, they're getting away with murder because of the division they play in. Imagine if they played in about 5 other divisions, where they'd be in the standings.
It's amazing. Jesus. That was disappointing that they were unable to cover the spread based on where they were. I knew better. I didn't bet them at the spread. I only teased them or used them in on the money line. But I think I used them in contests, which aggravated me.
When the line went to 3, I don't know why I didn't pull the trigger on Houston, because I didn't trust Jacksonville in the least I thought they'd do something stupid during the game. But it wouldn't have mattered anyway since it pushed.
Arizona, Minnesota.
Game played out like I thought it would be. Confusing. Bunch of field goals.
Yeah, that wasn't a big giant shootout like in years past.
Yeah. Where they got in the red zone enough or near it.
I don't think Arizona didn't play poorly and Minnesota didn't play great. It was just, did they? I kind of I didn't see a lot of that game, but it just seemed like Minnesota did what they had to and Arizona just came up short. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, 2 thoughts on this game, and I think Minnie gets the better of these thoughts. If you saw a little bit of the highlights, or those who did, saw that unfortunately Kyler Murray has these moments where he wants to play schoolyard football and he runs around, and you can't do that against a Brian Flores coach defense, and he gets these 15, 20-yard sacks. There were a couple of, and then he threw a mindless throw, I think, for an interception or something on a particular down. There are just 1 or 2 plays where he just wants to draw up plays. I just envision him being on the beach drawing up plays in the sand, and that's got to be coached out of him. And on Minnie's side, I like it when Sam Darnold throws the ball away, when he stays turnover free. And I thought Minnesota and their really good coaching staff, O'Connell's a good coach, kept him out of harm's way. So I thought Minnesota settling for field goals was the wise move, but Arizona kind of thought they could win the ball getting creative against a Brian Flores defense. So I like Minnesota's game plan more than Arizona's in retrospect.
They signed Connor to a multi-year contract.
You're the running back. These running backs are making a difference, taking the pressure off quarterbacks. We talked about that in Minnesota. We see the results in Baltimore. We see the results in Philadelphia. And Connor's had a really, really good career considering where he came from and what he's had to overcome. Yeah, I know what game you're getting to next.
You know what? I think I teased both ends of the game, and that was it. I played some numbers. I saw the Jets should have blown them out, and somehow Seattle came away with the win.
Yeah, I just know Rodgers owes me money for his attitude and for his play. The chance to go up by 3 scores, whether it be 24-7 or 28-7, and then you throw that play from a guy who used to be so proficient in the red zone to make that throw, and then to make the throw again when they were down 26-21 and had a chance to win the game. It's not like Seattle's defense is one that plays lights out. They're a work in progress, the defense. You can take things against them. I don't know what the Jets did, but I know that they should have won the game.
Yeah, that was a strange spot for Seattle. I think I kind of indicated that I felt the bye was, a great reset for them. And this was a good spot this was a spot that they could win even under the difficult circumstances. But, knowing the chaos the Jets were in and Rodgers is gone, that was one way that, Seattle might have an edge. And it seemed like that's the reason they won. Now they've got a tough game with Arizona for the division. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, that'll be fun. But they're in a position because they didn't do stupid things. Geno didn't turn the ball over, which, to his credit, because if they were down 3 scores and they were down 2 scores, and if they got down 3 scores, he would have had to force more throws.
Seattle is not doing well offensively the last 5 weeks.
Yeah, I think there's a ceiling to what they could do offensively, even though if you look at their top 3 receivers, it's top 5 in the league. I mean, some teams don't really have a number 2 receiver, and they have 3 really good receivers. When you have Tyler Lockett as your number 3 receiver, you've got a good receiving core.
Seattle, number 1 gainer defensively. Do you think that's real? Memorex, a little bit
of a function of what kinds of teams they're playing recently, but it's also a function, Chris, of the reset they had when their coach had the bye week. So I'm surprised, number 1, but I'm not surprised improvement. Not surprised that they are going to improve as they get more comfortable with the scheme.
Boy, my gosh, this Tampa Bay game almost killed me. Yeah. That was beyond better abuse and torture for me. All I needed was Tampa Bay to win the game. And
so I have a question for you. If they tie, what's your bottom line look like? And it's not a loss. You get reset on some of the plays.
Oh, yeah. A tie would have been fine.
I was rooting so hard for a tie.
Well, I was rooting for a tie too at one point. Again, this will get to the point I make later on. It's just amazing how these games are ending sometimes. It would be a bad movie if you put it into the real script into the movie.
Yeah.
Rams fared better than I expected them to do. Obviously, Saints lose Hill for the season.
Yeah, boy, what a big blow. And they lost him early enough that it possibly cost them the game.
Yeah, I think it did. They were doing okay up to that point.
Finally using him, and then that happens. It's really sad.
I think, this is going to be an interesting game this week. A lot of people think that the Rams are drawing live. Mm-hmm. We'll talk about that later. Eagles, Ravens. Didn't know why I had the Eagles favored, but wasn't overwhelmingly confident in it. That was a nerve-wracking game, and after the first quarter, they just dominated.
I had Philly in the future plays, the games of the year that I bet in August, but I did not bet Philly, interestingly enough, to add to it last week, because even though they had this winning streak, I just thought it was a tough game. The circumstances weren't quite the same as when I bet it in August. So I let that particular smaller play, ride. And to their credit, they didn't panic when they're down 9-0. Philly, for the longest time now, has really tried to emphasize the run over the pass, which I think it fits into Jalen Hurts a lot better. The other thing is Devontae Smith did not play in this game. Second straight game he hasn't played. And once again, Philly really didn't have another target to throw to. So the fact that Philly came from behind and won 24-19 without that much help other than from A.J. Brown, pretty encouraging. And obviously their secondary is playing so much better than it has with these 2 rookies.
I have a note here. Philly's 9-0 with A.J. Brown in the lineup.
Yeah. Yeah, at one point they were out Brown and Smith, and then they were struggling, and everybody wanted Sirianni's job. And we still, I'll speak for myself, I still don't know how good a coach he is. I just know that Howie Roseman is such a GM that he feeds this team with a lot of talent.
Yeah, it seems like there are media pundits going out of their way to sheepishly say, "Well, I think he's a good coach." So
Yeah,
it's
they
pretty
don't
clear
really
that
know.
there's
We don't
debate
really
up
know.
for it.
Yeah, they've switched coordinators, and obviously Vic Fangio coupled with the two rookies defensively, and all the and they go too deep on the defensive line, so it really helps when a team pays attention to roster building.
I was disappointed to see McCaffrey go down. I would have liked to have seen San Francisco keep the game closer, even though I had Buffalo all over the place. I thought Buffalo would be able to win that game uh, pretty easily, but I didn't. San Francisco never had any hope, obviously.
Yeah, Buffalo was important to me for a bottom line play that I had made, but I just thought San Francisco was in a weird situation. I don't know if we talked about it last week, but they went to Green Bay, I think it was the week before. Is that right? And then they came home, and then they went to Buffalo this week.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not easy, especially with the depleted roster. I think I was telling somebody, forget about roster building for San Francisco. The thing they need the most is a sports psychologist, a nurse, a doctor, a pediatrician. Somebody every single year. This team is beat up and injury prone like I've never seen. They need a hamstring specialist. They need all kinds of doctors to fix this team.
I think they need a complete rebuild. I think, unfortunately, we talked about it before the season that this was going to be their last season of hope. And it wasn't looking promising because CMC had been healthy for too long and he was due to be unhealthy. And sure enough, that's what's happened.
And they're probably going to lose Deebo Samuel in free agency since they paid Ayuk. So there's a lot of moving parts. And you're right. Whether they like it or not, the roster may look different next year.
One more to go. This game last night.
It was a weird one. Huh.
I'm just looking. We had 1, 2, 3.
I don't have as many fingers as you had plays on the game.
We had like 7 of the games last week literally were toss-ups at the end.
Yeah.
My radar went off before this game started, and I had a funny feeling that Cleveland was the right side. And I had a heavy load on Denver, plus 4.5 and pick. So started buying up a lot of Cleveland plus 14.5. Cleveland obviously was the right side. Winston threw for 6 touchdowns. Unfortunately, a lot of them went to the other side. And Cleveland, I don't understand how Cleveland was able to make that Bronco defense look as bad as it did.
Yeah, I'm more concerned about Cleveland's defense, which was reportedly supposed to be good to very good at the start of the year. But one of the things I caution about, I got some pushback from it, but I caution about the fact that some of the performances last year, Cleveland had some very brutal weather games last year, if you remember. There were like 3 in a row where they were playing in 15 degrees and wind chills and so on. And wind holds down scoring and holds down stats to a great extent. And I was definitely worried about Cleveland's road splits, not to mention any home games that they played in clean weather. But I'm still surprised that Cleveland's been looking this bad defensively, other than the obvious divisional game that they cared about against Pittsburgh. Cleveland made Bo Nix look like a seasoned veteran.
Well, he's been playing better and better every game. They they're not babying this guy. They were letting him throw out of the end zone. And
You're right.
he was in high leverage situations the entire game. And that's really, I think, contributing to him developing fast.
Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, they did put him in situations where they took the baby gloves, the kid gloves off him, and they let him do this thing. And that's what happens when you got a guy in the NFL that's older with 61 college starts. So he's seen a lot of things. He's played in big games in college. And that's one of the reasons Peyton wanted him over Russell Wilson, is because Nick's is a quick decision maker. It's hard to say that for a rookie, but he makes quick decisions. Russell Wilson wants to see it a little bit more and wants to do some of the lofty throws. And Russell Wilson is having a resurgence, we know, this year as well. But for Sean Payton, he wanted a Bo Nix type in this offense. Are you ready for Week 18?
Steer the boat, Ron. Steer the boat.
Okay. I think this topic matters, and maybe the people who watch this or listen to this will agree, disagree, or whatever. But Week 18 is always one of the most fun weeks and sometimes the most agonizing weeks, because you have to act quickly when you work on Week 18. First quarter plays, second quarter plays, second half plays, who's going to play, who's going to sit. Lines move on Monday and Tuesday faster Week 18 than any other week. So what I wanted to do is kind of go team by team and give my take on what Week 18 is going to look like. And I'm not going to be discussing this when we get to Week 18, you and I and Ted and whatever other shows, I will probably not talk about this, because the lines are going to be moving fast and I won't have all my plays in and so on and so forth. So selfishly, this is the time I'm going to talk about this. So let me start with Buffalo. Buffalo, the number one seed, matters because you get that bye. We'll talk about Kansas City, but we saw what the bye meant in the AFC last year. If Buffalo locks it up, my feeling is that they will play Josh Allen for 10 minutes to 20 minutes in this particular game. So my take on this team would be not to go against Buffalo in their last game in the first half, but if you could get third and fourth quarter plays against Buffalo, that's what I would recommend at this particular point, if Buffalo is locked up the number one seed. Any feeling on that from you or anybody else?
Well, he's in the MVP running, so he might have to just make an appearance based on that. But I don't. Do you really think that they would have a number one seed wrapped up by then?
It's possible if Kansas City loses the Chargers this week, loses another time, and they have the tiebreaker because they beat Kansas City. So head to head, they could have locked it up. A lot of these things I'm going to talk about, they may have something to play for. We don't know that they're going to lock it up. I'm just saying if they lock it up, I expect Josh Allen to play for roughly 10 to 20 minutes. And the way I will attack this game is by fading them in the third and fourth quarters. I want to talk next about Miami, believe it or not. And Miami may not make the playoffs, probably won't make the playoffs. They have two more cold weather games. But
they can buy tickets to any game they want.
I know. If they make the playoffs, it's going to be the same as last year, Chris. They're going to make it beat up, exhausted. They were injured last year. They're going to play a cold weather team. This is not a playoff note, but if Miami does make the playoffs, they are complete fade material week one of the playoffs.
Yeah, well, they're not making the playoffs.
Okay. Now we go to Baltimore. Now, many things may not be locked up with Baltimore. And I'm of the opinion that when Week 18 comes, Baltimore is going to play hard regardless of the situation. It's kind of a hardball thing. I do think you could find, if they don't have anything to play for, that Lamar sits in the second half. Now, we've seen this. You and I have talked about this before. Baltimore gets off to a lot of early leads. In fact, they did again last week against Philadelphia. I think the correct play would be even if they lock something up, you could still consider Baltimore in the first quarter as a play. But if I were Baltimore, and I want your opinion on this, I would do everything possible to avoid playing Pittsburgh in the first round, which would be probably a number 3 seed versus a number 6 seed, because those games are emotional. They take a lot out of you. It's hard to come back from those games. I don't think those teams want to see each other. That's the only scenario. If you're looking at pre-18-week scenarios, be careful. Try to find out where that Baltimore-Pittsburgh matchup is, because one or both teams may not want to see it.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. You don't want to face a divisional foe in the playoffs because it just burns you out.
Let me go to Pittsburgh real quickly. We have long-term data on Mike Tomlin, very, very long-term data. And Mike Tomlin will play his starters week 17. So my advice on Pittsburgh, regardless of the situation, is for the most part, don't treat Pittsburgh's week 18 game as anything different than a week 1 through 17 game. Treat it the same, with one caveat. I think depending on the situation, you may see more of Justin Fields week 18 than you would otherwise. You will see Justin Fields, but I think most of the other starters are going to play a great deal of the game regardless. So I'd be cautious about treating Pittsburgh any differently.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Let's talk about Houston. Houston's not playing well. You and I both know that, but they could still lock up the division in 2 or 3 weeks because they have Indy, Jacksonville, and Tennessee in the division. So if they've locked it up, and they're probably playing they'd be locked into the 4th seed, I believe. They're probably not going to be any higher. They have really nothing to play for.
Who did they play last week?
Someone in their division, and it's not Indy, so it's either going to be Tennessee or it's going to be they play Tennessee. They're at Tennessee. I think Stroud sits a great portion of this game. The way that I would attack this game, I'll say it once, but not anymore, is that I would attack playing against Houston in the 3rd and 4th quarter. Let's go to Indianapolis. If somehow they make the playoffs as a 7 seed, it means that somebody faltered.
There's no way they can make it.
Yeah. If they make the playoffs, my playoff note is Richardson's going to run for a lot of yards, and he's going to be completely, bottled up in the passing game. Indy's probably going to be one and done, but they probably have a 5% chance to make it. Maybe a better shot at beating out Houston. But they're essentially 3 games back against Houston, I believe, because they lost the series to them. Let's go to happier times. Let's go to Kansas City. You and I had this on-air discussion where you drove the discussion. You asked me, what do I think Kansas City's odds are of representing the AFC in the Super Bowl? And they were locked into the number 3 seed at the time. I got, I think, plus 450 and plus 500. You got more, if I remember. I think you got 6-1 or something like that. So that was a great move by you. But both of us I even saw plus 450 as value. Otherwise, I wouldn't do it. But remember Kansas City's schedule last year. Weeks 11 through 17, they had a rest differential disadvantage all 6 weeks. And then somehow they were locked into the number 3 seed. Kelsey had incentives to play that week, and he said, no, I'm not playing that week. He did not play week 18. Mahomes didn't play. They said everybody. Essentially, Kansas City got a bye week. Then they played a beat-up Miami team, and Miami had to play Kansas City. We knew how that was going to go. And then they played the next week, I think it was against Buffalo, but they had advantages and in-season revenge against Buffalo in that game. And then they played Baltimore, where Baltimore strangely called one running play the first half. But at that point, we could hedge, we could do whatever we wanted because we had these tremendous odds at that point. So once again, what if Kansas City is locked into the number 3 seed? I mean, they won't be locked. I'm sorry. What if they're locked into the number 1 seed this year? What if Buffalo falters and they don't have to play for anything? I'm not talking about the playoffs this time around, but I'm talking about week 18. I think we can fade Kansas City the last week of the year if they have nothing to play for based on past history.
Yeah, because they'll be locked into either the 1 or the 2 seed.
Yeah.
They'll probably be locked in by then, one way or another.
Right. And they're probably not going to fall beyond the 2 if they do fall. I mean, right now they're ahead of everybody, so they're probably not going to fall beyond the 2. So they know who they're going to play. They're going to play the 7th seed, whichever team that's going to be. It could be the Chargers again. We don't know. Could be Denver. So it could be a divisional opponent, but Kansas City may not be all hands on deck week 18.
Yeah,
Chargers.
I don't think they give a crap where they play, frankly.
Yeah. Now the Chargers are a different story, and Jim Harbaugh pretty well here. Do you think he would ever not try in a game?
I'm not 100% sure. I mean, I don't know. I don't think he would want. I think he would want to. I mean, at what point do you weigh injuries and rest and all that?
I think it would be wise for the Chargers to try to do everything possible to get the number 5 seed. That way you avoid a rematch against Kansas City, a game against Baltimore or Pittsburgh. I mean, you're locked into playing Houston probably if you're the 5 seed. I think barring any unforeseen circumstance, if they have the ability to get the 5th seed, the Chargers are going to be all in week 18. So I don't think they let anything up. I don't think it's a fade. It might even be you get a sweet line because people think, oh, they're in the playoffs. They don't have to try. I think there might be value on the Chargers. So I'm looking at it differently. The only other scenario I'd say, Chris, is if there's any concern about Herbert's health, he could sit. That's the only thing you have to watch out for. Here's my take on Sean Payton in Denver, because they're squarely in the playoffs right now. Sean Payton is devious. He will look at the standings. He will carefully look at all these things. I think if Denver plays Kansas City, you bet the under for the game, because it's going to look like August 15th. It's going to look like a preseason game. It's going to be a scrimmage, a 2 versus 7. If Kansas City is locked into the 2 and Denver's locked into the 7, and they have to play each other the next week, I think you're looking at 13-10.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's my take. That's my take on the AFC. NFC will go over Philadelphia. They're in 2 races right now. They're in a race with Washington still because they have to play another game against Washington, and they're trying to get the number 1 seed with the Lions. I think if they are locked in, let's say the Lions are locked into the 1 seed and Philly's locked into the 2 seed, then I think you see Jalen Hurts playing 1 quarter and that's it. So you have to scramble to play 2nd, 3rd, 4th quarter type situations. Does Philly play Dallas in the last week? And, Dallas is going to want to have some pride, I think. No, Philly plays the Giants. The Giants go to Philly. It's going to be a weird game. But I think Philly, if they're locked in, I think you'll see the starters out of the game sometime in the 2nd quarter.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. But they have to battle against Green Bay and Minnesota also for that 1.
Yeah, but they would have. Yeah, I mean, we'll have to see. This may be a moot point. If they're playing for something, then obviously they're playing hard. So I'm only suggesting it if they're locked in, of course. The 2 teams you don't want to play in the first round would be Philly and Detroit. I would take my chances against Minnesota, just like 2 years ago. They were they won all those 1-score games and they were 1 and done in the playoffs. I would take my chances against a team like Minnesota. Obviously, I would take my chances against anybody from the other 2 divisions. So what Washington, I think all wildcard teams want to avoid the number 7 seed. So if Washington has the chance to avoid being the 7th seed, and if they could somehow be in the running with Green Bay and Minnesota to try to get the 5 seed or the 6 seed, then they're all in.
What does the 7th seed play?
7 seed would play the 2 seed, which right now would be Philadelphia. And if Philly unseats Detroit, it would be Detroit.
Why wouldn't the 8 seed?
No, there's only 7 teams.
Oh, yeah, okay. I'm sorry.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, with one getting a bye. So if you're in the NFC, you want to avoid the number 7 seed. So here's the scenarios. If Washington can try to avoid the number 7 seed, they're going to play hard all game. If Washington is locked into the 7 seed because Green Bay and Minnesota have distanced them, then Washington will probably rest their starters in the second half of the game. 2 different scenarios there.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Let's talk about the Tampa-Atlanta dynamic. Atlanta's going south and Tampa's going north. If Tampa wraps up the division for any reason before week 18, I think you'll see Baker Mayfield in street clothes. That's the only comment I have. I don't think it matters whether you're the 3 seed or the 4 seed. Any opinion on that?
That's it's hard to believe there's 2 divisions fighting for that.
Yeah, I know. And we don't know how it's going to shake out because these teams are all roughly 6-6. Somebody's 7-5, but they play each other and they're going to beat up each other. But the 3 seed plays the 6 seed, the 4 seed plays the 5 seed. You're not going to be matched up against against a Detroit or Philly. So
well, they've got to win their division, so that's the only thing they're worried about.
Yeah, I think the division will still be at play, but if it's not, I think Baker Mayfield sits, and you have to act pretty fast on that. I would differ.
They're going to have to host either Philadelphia, Detroit, or Minnesota.
Yeah, well, they won't. Yeah, that's true. No, not as the.
Because the divisional winner will have the
right, but they won't face the highest of those 3. They'll play Minnesota or Green Bay probably, or Washington. They won't, at least not the first round. Yeah, there's a lot to digest, but I said I just want to go over this once. Atlanta, I think, will not rest most of their starters if they get in, because I really think with a new coach, they want to find their rhythm. I really think that they have things that they need to accomplish. Now, you might see Penix and you might see Cousins rest, but Penix has a lot of starts. They believe in him. But I do believe Atlanta would play more starters than Tampa Bay if they were in that situation where they cleaned up the division. That's my take on Atlanta, because Atlanta has a new staff.
I agree.
Okay, your Detroit team. They had nothing to play for last week, and it looked like Dan Campbell wanted to play 5 quarters with his starters last year. I kept saying, get them out of the game. I have 3rd and 4th quarter plays against you, Detroit. And somehow I won those plays, even though Goff played. What did Goff play? 52 minutes last year?
I'm not sure, but it was all hands on deck. They just kept dropping like flies.
Yeah,
I think you have to worry. Like, if with the injury situation, he may just learn not to be stubborn and do the what he should do and get some players some rest and stuff, because normally he wouldn't. But I think the way these injuries are adding up, that I don't think you can depend on him playing starters long.
My take right now is that he'll play his starters the entire first half, and then maybe he'll understand that you don't have to bring him back out for the 3rd quarter.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, because also he's got so many superstars, they would like to reach milestone numbers and stuff like that. He's got to kind of accommodate. And not that I think he's going to get it, but if Goff outduels Allen and the Lions run the table, I think you've got to throw Goff in the MVP discussion.
Yeah, I have him 3rd right now, behind Goff first, behind Allen first and Barkley second. Green Bay, you have to monitor. I really believe it because I don't think there's a difference. Again, if I say there's no difference between the 3rd and 4th seed, I don't think there's a difference between the 5th and 6th seed either. So I think you have to monitor that. I think Green Bay would rest some injured or near injured starters if they were locked into 5 and 6. As long as if Green Bay, because they're in 3rd in that division, if Green Bay has a chance of falling into the 7th seed, then they're going to try because the 7th seed has a much tougher opponent than the 5th or 6th. But if they're locked into the 5th or 6th, beware that they may rest some starters.
I'll buy that. Those are all good notes. So it's good that we get this out of the way so we don't have to waste time talking about it week 18.
Yeah, because this is it. Yeah, I really thought this was an important topic, even just to get it off, just to get some bounce back and feedback from you in general. Same thing for Minnie and Green Bay are kind of in the same situation, other than the fact that Minnesota is so close to the Lions, they're probably going to have something to play for. Although I think their schedule's not that easy down the stretch. But I won't spend any more time on them. I will spend my last time here, 2 more points. First, the NFC West, which is wild right now. So we don't know. I don't know that anybody locks it up beforehand. But here's my take real quick on if any of these 4 teams lock it up. If Arizona locks up that division, Kyler Murray plays 15 minutes at most. The defense plays, and that's what you get out of Arizona. So you look at fading them the second half of the game. If the Rams somehow won the division before week 18 and locked it up, there won't be one starter allowed in the locker room. They will all be in street clothes. We've seen this in preseason with Sean McVay. He'll treat week 18 like a preseason game. If the Rams had locked things up, you're not going to see anybody play week 18.
I agree.
San Francisco has probably no chance of locking it up beforehand, so we don't have to talk about them. I think if Seattle locks it up, and obviously they're in first place right now, I think Geno Smith plays well into the second quarter, and then they start funneling out some starters one by one in the second and third quarter. I think Seattle still, with the new staff, tries that first half of the game. So I wouldn't get too cute with Seattle, except for when you get to the second half of the game. You feeling the same way about Seattle, that they would pretty much try at the beginning of the game?
You would think so, yeah.
Yeah.
But you have a new coach, so we don't know.
Yeah, I think the Rams, I think Ted could get a lot of interviews with the Rams starters, Birdie, because they would have nothing to do. They wouldn't even be at the facility. I mean, that's a known fact. What's your take? In the past, I've seen many books not put up week 18. Every week we see we already have next week's lines up, week 15. Books don't usually put up week 18 look aheads, do they?
Well, this discussion is already had me make a mental note that I am going to want to be looking ahead to see if week 18 lines are there.
Yeah.
I think it would be kind of foolish for them to have them just because they'd be very vulnerable.
If you get them and some seeds are locked up, act accordingly. It may be something advantage player, advantage us as opposed to the books. One thing I didn't cover, I'm not going to cover, is teams out of the playoffs, because there's also some week 18 value with teams out of the playoffs. Which teams are trying, which teams are just going to play rookies, which teams have already packed their bags. Does Aaron Rodgers even enter the facility, for example? There's a lot of different things going on, plus player incentives. Keep that in mind. A lot of people, I've done it in the past, we put out, what are the incentives? This guy needs 33 yards. This guy needs 5 catches to reach a certain milestone. This guy gets $1 million if this happens and stuff like that, which is more prop related. So we're not going to cover that right now, but just be aware there's another discussion to be had about what teams that are out of the playoffs are going to phone it in as well.
Well, the other thing to remember about those props, the books know what those incentives are, and sometimes you're really being taxed way too high on it. So
Yeah, that is correct. If somebody needs 53 yards to get 1,000 and they're priced at 60, it's not a good play because they may get 54 and sit. So you have to be careful about that stuff. Plus, books are not putting up player props for all the games week 18. I experienced that firsthand last year. Thanks for indulging me in this conversation.
Yeah, it's a good conversation. I've got my little note cards here. Hopefully,
The floor is yours now.
well, let's good. Let's run through the upcoming week because I'm way behind this week.
Okay.
We know the Lions are decimated by injuries. We'll know more tomorrow. I don't think Decker's going to play left tackle. That hurts them. They've got a variety of other issues. Green Bay looked okay last week. But I don't know that was that Green Bay looking good or Miami looking bad. I think that was more Miami looking bad. What do you think? They put the pedal to the metal. They didn't run the ball. Even when they had the lead, they just kept passing.
Yeah, Aaron Jones had lost 2 fumbles, I believe, in that game, and he was just distraught about that. So it was a weird game for Green Bay from that aspect. I think they would have preferred to run the ball more. I think Green Bay looked at the situation and said, we can do enough things to keep Miami at bay. We've got them where they want them. Not a good situation. I don't think they had to look that good against Green Bay to get the job done. And this game may have been on their minds. We don't know.
So Love has had 2 of 3 games with a 75% completion ratio or more. And he's shattered his career best. He's up to 2 games with no interceptions.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's the tail of the tape. If Love throws no interceptions, I think Green Bay can pull the upset. Detroit has 14 defensive interceptions on the year. Personally, I think that's the battle. Can they turn Love over?
I think that it's possible that extra value shows on Detroit here for overcompensating for the publicized injuries of Detroit.
Yeah. No, according to pure power ratings, not counting injuries, and I know that's a tough task, Detroit line is a little soft. It should be a little higher based on full strength power ratings.
Green Bay plus 13. If they win this week, I don't have off the top of my head who how the schedule breaks though.
They play at Seattle, home on Monday night to New Orleans, which is obviously a good spot. At Minnesota, which will decide a lot of things if they win this Detroit game, and then home to Chicago at the end of the year in a good spot. If they need the game against Chicago, it's a good spot.
Who won the first Green Bay Minnesota matchup? It had to be Green Bay. Or I mean, it had to be Minnesota.
Probably Minnesota because Minnesota's ahead of them. I don't have it in front of me.
Well, if Green Bay runs out,
they still need Detroit to lose another time.
Well, Green Bay would beat Detroit and split the season series. They'd split the season series with Minnesota. I guess it would go to conference tiebreaker.
Yeah. We may be a little early talking about how that plays out, but first they have to actually physically beat Detroit. I mean, 1,300 sounds like a good deal, but it when you take something plus 1,300, you're not expecting to win it. You just have some value.
Yeah, I don't think the odds would be that high if they weren't facing a tiebreaker problem too.
Could be.
Because it's not unrealistic for them to run the table here if they beat Detroit.
No, it wouldn't be unreal. I probably 3-1 would be their ceiling. Split at Seattle, split at Minnesota.
Atlanta and Minnesota. That's going to be interesting. Minnesota just got hit. Somebody must have released Minnesota. It's up to 5.5, 6.
Yeah. Cousins comes back to Minnesota. Does that mean anything? Off his 4 interception performance, it kind of dulls it for me.
I forgot about that.
I expect Minnesota to blitz him like crazy.
I agree. There's something wrong with Cousins. I don't know what's going on with that.
Those throws lack confidence.
You have any angles on this Saints Giants, or you're ignoring the game?
I would not touch the favorite in a series. The problem is the Giants don't play well at home.
I know.
I think this is going to be a run fest. I honestly believe that Derek Carr is on his way out. He does everything but win games. And I don't know who's quarterbacking for the Giants right now. There could be a call in to a relative or friend of mine or something to suit up. I don't know. I would think that both of these teams want to run the ball and see if they could, because these teams can't play defense against the run. They both allow over 5 yards per carry. And City by the Bay said it. The Giants, their fans even turn against them. They're just a money burner at home.
Oh, geez. Jacksonville, the Titan. This is what I really hate about the end of the year.
You got marquee game. 6 teams don't play this week, by the way.
That's correct.
Yeah, so you have
this is too late for a bye. This is ridiculous.
You're very late, but they wanted to make Thanksgiving a whole week and stuff like that. I don't know what the NFL is doing. They don't know what they're doing when they schedule this stuff. And Jacksonville, Tennessee is kind of a non-game. I don't think you're going to see Trevor Lawrence the rest of the year.
Oh no, he's as dead as disco.
Yeah. Ridley, by the way, Calvin Ridley used to play on Jacksonville. They lowballed him. He wants to have a big game against Jacksonville. I'll just throw that out.
Well, you saw what happened last night with Judy. You know, when a player wants to have a big game, Raiders and Bucks. The Raiders are still playing hard. I expected better performance out of Tampa Bay last week. Tampa Bay got hit since we went online. They're down to 6.5, which makes sense. My line was 6.5.
Let's see. My line would have been 7.5, but I agree with you. As bad as Vegas is, and they make mental mistakes all the time, it doesn't mean they're not playing hard. They're definitely playing hard. They just make mental mistakes.
I've got the same question. What do you? I've got some Bo Nix offensive rookie of the year that I think isn't looking that great anymore. What do you think?
Offensive rookie of the year. So that would be both leagues then, not just AFC or NFC.
Right.
Well, it should be looking better that Bo Nix is catching up to these people, but a lot depends on who makes the playoffs and, how does Washington finish with Daniels? How does Denver finish? It really depends.
Yeah, but what about Bowers?
Oh, Bowers is fantastic. But he doesn't play quarterback, and the Raiders are out of sight, out of mind. So it's a tougher sell on Bowers, but Bowers, unbelievable performance this year.
You don't think Bowers can do it?
I haven't paid attention to those markets because they're index kind of markets, and I'm not an index market player. So
no, I don't think the Bucks should be -7 in this game. It doesn't mean I'm betting the Raiders.
Yeah, we'll see if Tampa can get to O'Connell, who's kind of a statue in the pocket. He's that old school guy who doesn't move around very well. If Tampa doesn't get to him, then he's going to complete a lot of passes against Tampa's secondary.
Browns Steelers. Boy, it's a strong 6.5, week 7.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if this game doesn't finish at 7. The Browns off Monday Night Football. The public sees what happened there with Winston. They just played at altitude. Now they have one less day to play, and
Is it
then Pittsburgh
altitude
has
or
revenge.
elevation?
Yeah, something like that. But yeah, Pittsburgh knows what happened 2 weeks ago. Yeah, the public will be all over the Steelers.
Here's a little known fact. I've never heard this before.
Something about Tomlin?
Little diamond in the rough nugget I found out. Did you know that Tomlin has never had a losing season?
I don't know that for a fact. Maybe he coached his kids, Pee Wee League, and they went 0-1 or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Panthers, Eagles. Make the case for Carolina.
It's a letdown game for Philly. That's where I would probably. I mean, what if they win by 10? They're happy. That's my case for Carolina. Carolina's playing hard. Bryce Young has renewed confidence. He's played well the last 3 weeks. The new coaching staff is finding their rhythm. It's kind of a game that I wouldn't be betting Philly. If anything, I would look at Carolina.
How are they going to stop the run?
How are they going to? Well, I mean, Barkley is going to be playing. To me, it's like Ashton Genty with Boise. What matters is not that they stop him outside of the 20. What happens inside of the 20? Do they stack the box when one team's trying to get him more touchdowns to feed him and the other team knows they're trying to go to him? And that's where it's kind of reverse psychology. But if Philly tries too hard to reach these incentives, they're going to lose sight of kicking field goals and getting touchdowns in the red zone. So I could make a case for Carolina. I haven't delved into the game.
The Panthers teaser covered last week. I don't know about this week.
Mm-hmm.
Jets, Dolphins.
Yeah, I'd like to ignore both teams if I could.
Seattle, Arizona. I'm very interested to see what happens there. I just feel Seattle's the better team between these two, but I don't know. It seems like Arizona's due for a win.
Yeah. Of all the lines that I set this week, my lines were unfortunately very spot on, but I was a little surprised Arizona was pretty much 3 to start the week. And now they're 2.5. That surprised me a little. I know it's a turnaround and Arizona absolutely needs the game and they're capable of beating the Seattle team, but Seattle's played very well in Arizona. Were you at all surprised that the line opened 3?
Yeah, I think that's too high.
If Penn State beats Oregon, do they become the number 1 seed? Actually, I think yes. I don't think it'd be between Penn State and Texas. Georgia couldn't become the number 1 seed, so they're out. Oregon couldn't stay the number 1 seed because Penn State beat them. So it just depends on how you feel about Texas. It's either going to be Penn State or Texas in that scenario.
Well, Penn State's going to beat Oregon, aren't they?
I'm going to write something up on that game. And basically my one problem with Penn State is that when the big boys come calling, they haven't done their job. They can't beat Ohio State. They were all out to beat a mediocre USC team. James Franklin hasn't had a signature win when it matters. They match up well, but the question is, can they get a signature win?
No. Good point.
Did you see, by the way, Penn State on the last play of the game up 37-7 threw a pass with their backup quarterback to score a touchdown?
Did that change the spread or total?
Change the total, that over covered.
Ugh.
James Franklin is notorious for doing that. And I just think there's karma somewhere coming.
I think you have to expect Bills to show up. I don't think that there's there's no time to rest for Buffalo. I think they want that number 1 seed. I think Allen wants MVP. I think you can expect a Buffalo effort, and I'm not sure. I know the Rams seem to win every other game. This is their time to lose.
I think this is the most intriguing and maybe my favorite game of the week in terms of watchability. I really like to see the strategy in both directions in this game. Where do you have Buffalo's defense rated?
My gosh, the injury report for the Packers-Lions, the Packers injury report is twice the size of the Lions somehow.
Wow.
Where do I have the Buffalo defense?
Yes.
Like 10th or 9th?
So we're completely different there. I have Buffalo's defense roughly 21st.
Wow.
They got a great turnover ratio, plus 17. They're slightly above average in sacks, but they allow Stafford's going to have a high pass completion in this game, and their run defense isn't good enough either. And so if they can unleash Williams, who hasn't really run to the level he's run in the past, but I can promise you this, if the Rams aren't afraid to run Williams 25 times if need be. Conversely, Buffalo has advantages offensively against the Rams, but what holds me back is the fact that Buffalo doesn't have on my stat sheet the defense that makes me feel, gee, I really want this road favorite because they don't have a shutdown defense.
Well, I've got them the fourth best improving defense the last 5 weeks. Maybe you're just a week behind.
I will research that. I have a homework assignment, research Buffalo. And Thursday, if I can remember, you remind me on Thursday with Ted, I'll see, because he'll talk about the Rams, I'm sure. I will talk. I will research
Bears
Buffalo.
49ers I want nothing to do with.
Yeah. I wouldn't touch the 49ers right now. They've got to be deflated.
I think San Francisco's done. I don't think we're ever going to see the team. And it's a shame. They were a damn good team. But I think Purdy will not get his big contract. They're in a position where they could draft a quarterback. If Purdy wants to wants too much money, they could let him go.
Yeah. Well, you like people on rookie contracts, but that rookie contract is going away soon.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with Debo and everybody else they want to keep. Fred Warner, is the heart and soul of their defense. And the parts around him are where they have 5 of their top 6 defensive backs are injured.
So is my model whose number on the Buffalo defense do you think is closer to true reality?
I don't know. I mean, you like your number, I like my number, but I do not have Buffalo in the front part of the NFL defensive pecking order, but I will research that.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, I actually have them 8th.
Yeah. I don't put numerical numbers, but the eye test tells me they're around 21st.
Well, that would put them near Tennessee.
Yeah, I would have Tennessee slightly better.
Wow.
Tennessee's
right.
problem.
I'm back to the drawing board.
Tennessee's problem comes from Will Levis. They allow more points offensively than most teams, which cuts into their. You look at, oh my goodness, Tennessee is allowing 28 points per game, but the defense is allowing 24.
And Chris Hunter here's the tiebreaker. He doesn't like the Bills D either, so I guess you win.
Just briefly.
The Bengals and the Cowgirls.
Oh, God, what a game. I heard that the Simpsons are the reason why this game is still on Monday. Some sort of Simpsons convention is caused.
Oh, that's right. They were trying to move it.
Yeah, so blame Homer if you have to watch this game.
Just getting back to this Thursday game, long injury list for Green Bay. Do they play games with their injuries?
Yeah, I think what's today's Tuesday, so the real the injury report should come out now, actually.
And that's my point. They've got
Yeah.
15 players on here.
Wow. If they're
Alexander,
is it
Alexander,
questionable? How many are questionable?
uh,
Because questionable guys play.
well, actually, they don't have that designation. They had this is the practice reports, actually.
Oh, okay. No. When they have the designation, which is supposed to come out by this afternoon, I believe, and it says questionable, then I don't worry about it. If it says
Right.
doubtful, they're gone.
Well, yeah, we know that. I mean, Burrow is just going to keep pressing the pedal to the metal with the offense, and the Dallas is serviceable on offense against a bad defense, right?
Now, there's no reason to not try to expand offensively. There's no reason to hold back and play a predictable running game. The playoffs aren't on the line. Just shoot it out.
Anything else on this week?
Nope. That's good enough.
I wanted to bring up what I went through last week, just because it kind of touches a little bit on what you said a few times on betting strategy, betting techniques. Oh no, I leave my info in the garage. No, I think I do have it. So I guess for those that don't know, I've shifted my betting a lot more toward parlays and teasers for the reasons kind of Ron was referencing when we were going through last week's results. In my opinion, there are far too many games that are coming down to the final 2-3 plays of the game, the final minute, a bad referee call. I'm not handicapping these games to be at the mercy of ridiculous variance based on 1 minute of play or 2 or 3 plays. It's ridiculous, and it can go either way. So that was one of the reasons why I started gravitating toward avoiding laying points and trying to get more points as an underdog. And so that's the position I'm in. And I have my season stats. I wanted to see how it all broke out, which I'll talk about in a minute. But so on a standalone game like Thursday, and I'm bringing this up just because I have clients that follow me that had a hard time catching what I'm doing. And I've got them all over my DMs on a regular basis. They're absolutely on board. They're understanding and now seeing in action exactly what it is that I'm doing, how I'm doing it, how it's layered. For example, Thursday game, it's a standalone game. It starts at its own time. Why in the hell do I want to lay points when I don't have to lay points? So, in a game like that, I'm putting in parlays, I'm putting in teasers, but I'm never making anything dependent on one other result. So that's why I'm doing so many. If I'm going to bet 4% on a game, well, then I'm going to probably put 4 or 5 plays in that go into other teams so that I don't ruin the Detroit leg if the back end loses, and they kind of spider out, and teams are not too dependent on other teams. And this particular week made an absolute huge difference. I'll go into that in a second too. But on this game, I had teasers up the wazoo, parlays up the wazoo on the Lions, and it looked like the game was just going to get away from them. And I almost lost an absolute absurd amount of money because I also thought the game was going to be close, and I had a bunch of Bears teasers. Over, I forget what it was. I think I got, no, I forget, I can't remember whether I got 21 or not, but I had over 17 on them. And in this situation, if I've got teasers and parlays going both directions, obviously I want to hit it in the middle. But what I like to do is try to prevent losing one direction or another. So I'm eyeing the in games and trying to protect one direction or the other. Now, last night's game was a complete and utter joke because they threw the ball every time and you had 70-yard plays. You can't do it. But in most games, you have a slower flow and you have an opportunity to kind of protect losing one direction or another. So there's equity in that part of the equation also, was being able to protect either side. And I got myself into hot water because I started playing Detroit in game. I thought I was safe at like -9.5 plus money, protecting my +14.5, +17.5, or I think I was protecting +17.5s. And obviously the Bears could have won that stupid game, and all those Detroit minus. So I was heavily invested in Detroit. I'm trying to protect losing the Chicago side, and I almost lost all the hedge of the hedges and all the Detroit, and it would have been just a colossal disaster for me. So even being an experienced bettor, I got myself into hot water. I do not want to see myself put in again in similar fashion. So does any of that make sense to you, Ron?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the point about almost got yourself into hot water, because you have to, especially for those that aren't as quick with the numbers or haven't been doing it as long as you have and so on, you have to understand that at some point the risk gets way up there. And so you have to cull back. It's like betting props. If you're layering props here, there, or everywhere, you might be so top heavy on a particular player one way or another that could ruin that whole analysis of that particular game. So I think you have to be careful that way. I understand the branching out part of it. I understand the part about, like for me, it was frustrating to lose 2 close games this week, but if they go the way I think they're going to go, my record keeping is a lot easier because I just have to calculate the straight wins versus the not straight wins. So everybody just has to find the comfort level with what's working for them. And you keep records, I keep records. There's a lot of people out there that don't keep records and think they're winning doing this, and maybe they're deluding themselves that they're not really winning doing this. So you have to know where your strengths are. That's always been the case, and you can't let 1 week bring you down or bring you 2 up. It was a challenge for me this week. This was probably the first and hopefully last frustrating week of the year with Saturday and Sunday's results. So it's a sample size of 5, and it didn't go my way. So I just have to remember that. There it is.
See that? I've got tiny little writing, 4 full pages, and these are just my bets. Now I have to rewrite them and go over them again and verify them, and it's just ridiculous. I know I had 45 teasers going into Sunday, which I added more on Sunday. So it's just ridiculous. So, but touching on your point, okay, we heard you, you don't like to, deal with the spreads. How's it working for you? Which is important because my perception of what's working for me wasn't really what I thought it was, actually, because I thought I was doing a lot better on teasers than I was. And I didn't realize how valuable the parlays are to me. and I know that you started to explain, start with the parlays. And again, I'm betting parlays not to get big paydays. I'm betting parlays to put big favorites into action. And it's basically risk control, risk maintenance, because it's a lot easier to stomach risking the same amount on each play than it is, okay, well, I've got minus 430 on this, minus 280 on this, and it kind of makes everything loopy. So that's why I like to combine teams, and I like to have parlays that are somewhere around even money, maybe to plus 150 range. So that's the strategy behind this. And I'm only doing pretty much, I don't do any 2-team teasers, because 3-team teasers pay better than a minus 120 teaser. And the other thing about it is, even if you have a shitty shop like MGM, FanDuel, some of these other shops, even Caesars, I think, they absolutely rape you and molest you, for 2-teamers. But once you go into the 4 and 5 and 6 teamers, well, now they start paying you reasonably, and you can use those. I've been hitting these 7 and 6, 7, 8, 9 team teasers at MGM. It's hilarious, and they pay pretty well. Anyway, I thought I was doing better on teasers than I am. I'm only up 10%, 10 units for the year on teasers, 8.7% ROI. And I thought, oh, that's okay. But listen to the parlays. Plus 37 units, 65% win rate. So 32 and 17 on parlays, and a 60.5% ROI. I didn't realize what bread and butter these parlays are for me.
Yeah, so you're generating a lot of thought processes, hopefully for the group as well as for me. And so I want to comment on some of them. It just dawned on me now, so thanks for the discussion, that 2-team teasers are getting out of range. I mean, it used to be even money. It's minus 110, it's minus 120. Now there's some minus 130s. They are kind of slanting it in the book's favor that way, which slants those 3, 4, and 5s, which I would guess haven't changed as much in terms of what they're offering you, into a better return on investment possibility than the 2s, because a lot of people never used to go beyond 2. But that's a good point, that 2s, you're not getting the kind of return on investment that you used to get. And I agree completely with you on parlays, because the only reason I delve into parlays is not for the get rich quick kind of situation, whatever. It's to manipulate the vigorish, because when it gets out of hand with a team, I can manipulate the odds. Oh my goodness, it went to 3.5, or oh, it went to minus 135, and I only wanted to lay minus 120 on something. I can manipulate it as long as I keep that key phrase ROI in the thinking. If I'm going to put it with a big favorite and reduce this number from minus 120 to plus 101 or something like that, just by putting a money line on a big team, I have to calculate what those chances are of that team winning, add it to this combination, and see if the ROI makes sense for me, not just indiscriminately creating a parlay with a team. Oh, they're supposed to win. Maybe they're not supposed to win according to my metrics. I really have to add that up. But that's how I would use the parlays. And I do maybe 1 or 2, or I've done probably about 10 of them, where 2 years ago I would have done 1. So I have increased that, where I do 1 or 2 sometimes in a week. And the reason I do that is, as long as ROI is not compromised, I want to get lower VIG.
So lifetime, I found this really interesting, a little bit off topic. I'm 79 bets under 500 lifetime, below 500 on parlays. 79, 401 and 480, 45.5%. But I'm up 85.99 units with an 8% ROI.
Yeah. So you know what that statement tells me?
Parlays are strong.
That statement tells me that you are 99% ahead of everybody else because you have kept track of 800 and whatever number of bets, and other people only keep track of week to week.
Now, I added something I'd never done before last night. So I got in a situation where it was really fat city for clients this week. Just every single game went our way except here's the bizarre thing. So here's another reason why I'm doing all this stuff is the model performance has not been up to the previous old standards. So this week, the model was 5-4 going into Monday. So I would have lost. So the model went 5-5 this week. I would have lost betting them straight like I would have 3 years ago. I would have lost a half a unit just on juice. We ended up 22 units doing it with the parlays and the teasers. The only thing that lost for us was some hedge bets, I think. So we got in a situation where I had 7 teasers and parlays going into Denver, and I had 1 with Cleveland coming back, which I call a run back. But I was so top heavy on Denver, I had to figure out, well, what am I going to do here? So usually I like to run 3-team teasers or 3-team parlays or 2-team parlays back the other way. But it was difficult in this situation because buying back Cleveland, and if you're teasing them, it's just not a good teaser. You really don't want to be teasing from that point. And I wanted to elongate as much as possible. So that was kind of a dilemma, is how could I do it the best way possible? And I'm looking at the following week. This week 14 sucks. I mean, it feels like week 18, doesn't it?
The NFL is really going to feel the fact that there are 3 fewer games, and yet you got some weird teams playing each other.
So I didn't like any of the teaser opportunities. So here's what I ended up doing. Because I do this a lot, but I needed to, pass it along to other people that may not have the same access. I decided, because DraftKings has the alt lines, and they'll let you parlay alt lines into alt lines, or they'll let you parlay anything. And other shops will let you do it also. But so I wanted that Cleveland plus 14.5 alt line. So I'm researching, well, what's the value of the, of each number, and trying to see, where am I going to get the best value? I mean, and some of these places just rob you. So for last night, the value of a 14.5 was 298. I sucked it up and did minus 320 within parlays. But here was the thing about it is, if you can't do the parlays that you want, you can create it on your own by just betting the alt line by itself. So I had people risking 3%. So I said, if you can't parlay these things, risk 3% to win. I forget what it is, like I don't have the numbers. It's something like 0.33 or 0.37 or something like that. And then you're going to be working off of 3.6. But see, I had it farmed out into 2-team and 3-team parlays, 6 of them, that they could create on their own. So rather than running 3-team teasers or 3-team parlays and having it do or die on that combination, I gave a better scenario where they can do it in 2 teams, and if you go 2-1, you're not losing everything. You're still okay. You're still okay. I mean, you're getting half your bet back instead. And if you go 2-1, well, then you're in good shape. And then 3-0 is a huge home run. So, that. So I'm looking at all these different ways to hedge back, take different positions, open up these big giant windows. And it's working out very well, and it's in so many ways because it's getting me wins, it's saving me losses off the model. Because if the model isn't working for me, you have to be willing to not be stubborn. You have to be willing to pivot and say, "Sorry, my model's just not working." There's more power to it to admit it's not working. What can I do to make it work? What can I do to change the model, or what can I do to change my betting? And not being stubborn and saying, I don't give a crap. I'm going to do whatever it takes. I'll do outlines. I'll do parlays. I'll do teasers. I'll do margin of victories. I'll do this. I'll do that. Whatever it takes. From betting experience is what I've had to resort to, and it's fine. It's very good. It's a hell of a lot more hard work than I could ever imagine. So that's my experiences I wanted to share with people. That a lot of people poo-poo teasers and parlays and say you're taking shortcuts and that's the easy way, or it's not. It's so much harder to do this, and it's so layered, and it just beats the crap out of you to do it right. And the important thing is, if you're layering everything by time and you're spreading everything out where teams are not too dependent on each other, and you can change whatever's remaining after each result along the way, people don't realize how powerful that is.
Yeah. No, a lot of good points. Hard to pivot in season. It's a difficult task. So it does expend a lot of energy. I know for the colleges, I have a couple of after season notes because of the portal and the nil and the and the rosters being rebuilt and all the coaches and stuff. I have to look carefully as to how I adjust power numbers for the first time in over 3 decades. I have to look at something I haven't had to look at ever. And then the running data doesn't work. You and I know this. The running data doesn't work as well as it used to, when it used to hit 60%. 4 years in a row, the Ivy League has hit 61%. So at least that league still works. But Ivy League, you don't get a lot of action done on. And I have to relook at how much weight I put on running numbers. There's only 2 categories where running numbers are working in the college. I have one question for you about your methodology. Just as we get closer to week 17 and 18, when you have I think you have fewer close games in week 17 and 18 than other weeks. I would have to research that. But how will this affect your strategy if you go in thinking that games could get kind of strange with teams checking out or teams checking in, that kind of thing? How does week 17 and 18, even though you haven't had practice doing this to the extent that you're doing it now, it may be something you want to think of, how week 17 and 18 past results might impact what happens this year.
By the way, I didn't mention I'm a loser this year betting totals, and I'm a loser betting straight sides. So this pivot has been very beneficial. As far as I'm using the model to get me directionally correct, and I'm shy about. And you know this from the process that you've been doing for 40 years. When things aren't right. When something's off with your numbers, and there are time periods where I really trust the numbers I have, and then you look at either the matchups with your numbers or whatever the scenario is where you're like, and I feel that way far too often with all these high leverage finishes that are random. So as long as I'm directionally helped, I feel okay. I'm certainly not going to press late weeks 17 and 18. I try to treat each week the same. I pressed a little bit last week, and I'm not going to do it again. I got completely overwhelmed, just completely in over my head. I couldn't keep track of the shit anymore. It just got ridiculous. So I need to do less. So those are the things that I'm working on.
So, really pivoting completely away from this, Sam Darnold is one of the better stories of the NFL this year. What's happening to him? So on Thursday, I'm hoping Ted will have some audio from anything from Sam Darnold. That's the task I gave him, to see whether or not we can get some Sam Darnold tape, because they're in the thick of things, Minnesota, which is not something most people thought at the beginning of the year. Season win total about 7.5. So look for that on Thursday.
Well, we should congratulate Chris Farley. He won the quarter at Circa for, I think, 150,000. Is that how much it was?
Somewhere in that neighborhood, 138, 150. I can't remember the number, but it's nice to get those in-season things. It just shows that these contests, you have to keep at it. You have to keep going, because you could win, some of these side contests that are going on. Even if you're not winning the whole thing, you're winning portions.
Yeah, I talked to him last week, and these contests rely so much. Like here's what I don't understand. I'm not doing well on sides this year, straight sides. Yet I'm doing really well in contests. I'm right in the thick of things, and I'm right where I want to be. There is just so much. There are so many factors in contests that people don't understand. There's so much luck involved. You've got to just to be able to you can't have a single horrible week, or you're done. And to be able to maintain that for an entire season, even for an entire quarter, is hard enough. But for an entire season, it's obviously you need a lot of luck. But one of the things I don't remember whether I mentioned it is, if you're out of contests and you're not doing well, you don't give up. You find and create your own new challenges and really bear down harder. Find somebody that's way ahead of you, or pick a place that is going to be your goal. I want to make sure I want to get up to 200th, or I want to get up to, whatever the random number is, and try as hard as you can to get to some goal that you create, because you need to have end of contest or end of year experience for that year that you actually do make it in the running at the end of the year, because that's a whole nother ball game of thought. And the first time you go through that is actually more advantageous, is if you're doing it when you don't have any hope, but you have your own goals and you're still able to challenge yourself to do it as well as possible. Because if you're flying off in the deep end and you're sitting in a position, I can tell you right now that I look at the board coming from behind, and I know for a fact that I can pass people as long as I take care of myself, because they're going to fuck it up. There's too many people that are going to make the mistakes ahead of you. And that's what you have to have the confidence in. And you play differently, knowing that people are going to be doing this or doing that. And you kind of weave around them. And if you do that yourself, even having a shitty contest year, you're you're going to learn this along the way.
See, what other show can give you week 18 talk, teaser parlay strategies, contest strategies, and even a little bit about week 13 and 14 all in one?
Well, holy cow, we've wasted too much of people's time.
We'll be back on Thursday, but this is a kind of brainstorming that Cris and I are used to doing, so I hope you enjoyed it.
That's all I got. I'm fried out. I got a lot of stuff to do still. Oh, I sold my house. Woohoo!
Oh, there you go. Should have led with that.
Well, we don't. So everything is going to just come all at once. Just a great NFL season. Contests are going well. Sold the house. Got a beautiful wife. Nice house. So everything's going better.
Okay, now just tell Kirk Cousins, let's go back in time and Kirk Cousins doesn't throw one interception and we're better.
Any other words of wisdom?
That's it from me.
Thank everybody for listening, and I appreciate everybody reaching out to me, and I hope that I know that I reach a fair amount of people, and any of you dumb shits that think you can't tease through zero, find somebody to take my action, please. So don't believe everything you hear. I would say out of all those hundreds of teasers, I'd say a third of them go through zero. So anyway, see you guys later.